So this is Mario RPG, which is one of those rare games that actually has a longer name in English. It's Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, but the Japanese game is just Super Mario RPG, so that's kind of weird. Um, the help that Peach says is in English, which is pretty common for these kinds of games. This was like the first RPG that I ever played, like Japanese or Western. Um, it's just like pretty much the simplest JRPG you could ever play. I mean, it's kind of like it's not really Dragon Quest-ish, but it does take some cues from it, which I'll get into at some point. These little turtles, which are called terrapins in the English game, are like weird because they only show up here at the beginning. And you don't get any experience from them or anything like that. Sometimes when I was a kid, I would just fight all of them in this entire hallway. I mean, you only have to fight this one group at the door. And you can jump on them already, you know. I mean, I guess you could start grinding up your jump power early. That's a thing, right? Like, you can grind up the power of the regular jump, I think, in this game, if you just keep on using it. I'll have to double check that during, like, a quiet part. I don't know why Peach would be tied up here and just like hanging from the ceiling, like next to a chandelier. Like, I don't know if that's supposed to imply that Bowser is like doing his sort of like last stand and he's just like backed into a corner here, or if he was about to just get up to something like really bizarre with her right before you showed up. I mean, obviously that's overthinking it, but, you know. Here we can see that the title is just Super Mario RPG, and I can't remember off the top of my head if it says Legend of the Seven Stars, but, like, in my head, that kind of looks wrong there, so I think it did. That's, like, one of the first spots. I think it is the first spot, unless there's something I'm forgetting in the intro, where you have to actually hit the jump key in order to progress. And I can remember sometimes I would just sit there without, like, getting off the coat hook. I don't really know why. It's just like, there's not really much to hang out with there in the house. But I mean, I think I've done that on, like, every screen in the game for one reason or another. These parts where Mario, like, acts out something in order to tell something to someone, like, via charades, since he doesn't really talk outside of, like, Mario 64 and stuff up to this point in time. Obviously, this came before Mario 64, but, I mean, anyway, I think those scenes are just really great. They're, like, cute, and they just allow for better storytelling in some places. It's just more concise. I always thought I was like some sort of genius because I figured out that if you don't let Toad give you the tutorial on items or whatever here, like, you get to keep that mushroom that he gives you, otherwise you have to use it. And I just figured, oh well, every other player must just go ahead with the tutorial. Like, why wouldn't they? I've only ever met, like, 3 other people in my life who I've actually talked to, like, had a conversation about this game with. Like, I know it's not, like, a rare game or anything, but I'll get into those people in the course of this video here. This here is, like, one of the many gambling-centric mechanics in this game, and really, like, tons and tons of Japanese games have this kind of stuff, especially in RPGs, like Dragon Quest. And in the course of this playthrough, I don't think I successfully got a lucky correct, and that ended up in me being really underleveled in this first part of the game, actually. This particular toad, or toadette, or whatever you would want to call it, is like a little bit more benign in Japanese. I think in the English, she like says like, "Look what you're standing in order to get you to jump." And I made sure to include my screw up in this part here, because this is like notorious. This is one of the few like truly missable things in Mario RPG, like getting this particular frog coin. There's one other opportunity you can get it, but like if you don't get it here, then like if you're me at least, you have it hanging over your head for the entire game up until that point, which isn't really that far off. I think it's like when you bring Peach back after rescuing her from Marymore. But I haven't had to do it that way in a while, so I don't really remember exactly. And this is another one of those great sequences. Like, Mario apparently has the power just to like totally transform into somebody else. This NPC that I'm talking to right now actually changes pretty frequently throughout the game and gives you like different info, just kind of like gossip. And there's a lot of games, not that I can think of right now, that have an NPC like that. Assuming they don't just have every NPC giving you different points of view about the game, which I'm sure is a lot of work. But this is actually one of the few segments where like something environmental happens. In this case, like Mallow is crying and it causes it to rain. And like this child, for example, is brought back inside by their grandparents and is told they can't play because it's raining. And a lot of these characters have some sort of comment about it. So you can miss that if you don't, if you just talk to Mallow immediately. I guess the Mushroom Kingdom, like this particular map zone, has the most stuff like that. That's kind of dynamic within the game. So you've got that one NPC, and you've got this whole scene with Mallow, and then you've got like the Samus cameo, which I've only ever unlocked like once, because one of the guides that's been on the internet forever, I think on like Game FAQs, says that you have to return at a certain point, and that's really not the point that you're supposed to return to. I'm sure most guides now have the right spot that you're supposed to come back and search for her, but I just always like tried in vain when I was a kid to get that scene, and I never got it. It's really easy to get the Link one, but that's not here. That's in a little bit. And then there's this like ultimately kind of pointless scene here where like the guy is getting Mallow's grandfather's thing ready, and Mallow is honest and says that, you know, he doesn't have the coin anymore. And you don't really have to do this, but you get this pick-me-up. Then you can do this, which I never really understood what the point of that was, but that's just yet another thing that you can do here in the Mushroom Kingdom. This, not this treasure chest that I just got, but this one that I'm about to get here, I didn't have much trouble with it this time, thankfully, but this can be really hard to get. And I'm sure you can probably see why, or you've experienced this yourself. If you go back down, she resets, which can be like a good or a bad thing, because she can go pretty much anywhere. It's not just like this like closed circuit where she runs over to the treasure chest and then like back to the center or whatever. I think here is where I like momentarily forgot that it's not here, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you'll see in a minute when I get to the other set of flowers. Yeah, so here, if you jump across, you get that Caracola. I think this is just about the most underleveled I've ever been going into this fight. And here you can see one of the few relatively instances in this game where like an elemental attack or something has an actual effect. I think in English it says Krako's dousing a tail fire if you hit him with Fire Orb, and that kills a turn. Yeah, it says in Japanese that he's trying to extinguish the flames. Like, I didn't buy any pick-me-ups, but luckily I had that one from that like otherwise useless cutscene that I was talking about, so this is always one of my favorite things in the game, just that Krako eats this weird mushroom when he's low on HP, and he only does it once. It's kind of one of the few instances of a boss really healing themselves like that. But this reminds me of one of those people that I was talking about, the people that I've actually met in real life who played this game like a lot or to completion or whatever. Like that I know of. I'm sure I've met plenty of people, especially online, who have played this. But anyway, one of the people always told me that they would stock up mainly on mushrooms when deciding what to bring into battle, and I always thought it was better to have pick-me-ups because that heals you to full and they're really cheap. So rather than like try to figure out like the HP economy or whatever and like, you know, figure out like when the best time to use like a 30 HP mushroom is, you can like just wait until they die and then revive them to full, so that's like a full heal, and it really doesn't like cost all that much in terms of money or just like turn economy or whatever. It's kind of like better in a way. It's kind of funny that you need to get this particular frog coin back when it's like, I don't know, I got one in the Mushroom Kingdom back there. This guy, you get the wallet back that you got from Krako. And you get the flower capsule, which is flower tab in English. I guess this is where I'll mention that I always save them and just wait until I'm like out in a map somewhere or a dungeon and I'm low on FP, and then I use it. It's basically like a full restore for your FP. I generally don't use magic all that much unless like I'm going into a run of this game being like, okay, I'm gonna try and use Mallow for like everything, which can be fun. But like typically I'm not somebody who uses Mallow all that much. even though he's like more interesting in some ways than like Bowser, for example. I guess maybe the implication with a lot of this, like, is that, because I was just thinking, because the star piece is there, and I'm like, well, how did the Smithy Gang, like, find the star pieces so quickly? And I guess, like, if you think about it, like, the Shy Guys here, I mean, those already existed in the Mario world, right? So, like, I'm guessing, like, maybe they're the ones who found them, sort of, and, like, they just kind of got conscripted into the Smithy Gang or something. I don't know. This is another fight where, like, you can inflict some sort of elemental thing onto an enemy, like Mallow's Thunderbolt can stun Mac. Although I don't think it always happens. But yeah, it seems kind of like a lot of these types of things are like mainly early game. It's kind of like they went into it being like, yeah, let's like fill the game with these kinds of things, and then they like just kind of fell by the wayside after a while. I don't know. Maybe I'm just missing a lot of those things, because there's actually one like really later on that I found that we'll get into when we get there. And I hadn't found that in like any of the other like 15, 20 times I played this game all the way through. But this fight is really easy as long as Mallow is powerful enough to kill all these Shy Guys like with one Thunderbolt. And for this video I didn't include a lot of the level ups, but like you may know if you played this game that you can pick between like attack and defense, HP, or like magic attack and magic defense when you level up as like a bonus. Like you get stat ups to all of them when you level up regardless, but like you can pick an extra stat to like focus in or whatever. And for every individual level for a character, like one of those stat ups is going to be like worth more, like relatively speaking, than the others. So like if normally the HP bonus gives you like, you know, 5 or whatever, then it might give like 7 or something in that like special level up. And it doesn't tell you this or anything, you just kind of have to like look at it and notice it, or like read about it in my circumstance. But anyway, like my approach to leveling in this is not to like worry about that too much, because like having a balanced character isn't super great, I feel like, and certain characters just don't benefit from like magic or attack at all or whatever. Like you're not going to make like a great attacker out of Mallow. I mean, like defense is still useful, I suppose, but I feel like you can like get better results like when all is said and done if you just kind of focus for the most part. I mean, I've done it both ways, and like it all works. Like this is not that difficult of a game. But the one thing I would never advise anybody is to like do the HP option, because like by the end of the game you're gonna have enough HP. So I mean, it does make you like more powerful in a way, but it's just really not worth it compared to like getting attacking power in one of the two categories. So like for Mario, I always chose attack and defense in this run, and for Mallow, I always chose magic attack and magic defense. And with the next character, you can pretty much go either way, I feel like. If you really wanted to have a balanced character, you could go that way. And then, actually with Peach, once you get her, I think, maybe I'll get into this more later, but I think it like doesn't behoove you to like put magic power into Peach, since like most of her stuff is just healing or whatever. And especially if you don't put points into HP, like her heals always heal enough anyway. So, I mean, maybe I'll just touch on this like whenever a new character joins. One thing about this is that I had forgotten like the distribution of stars. Like, not so much here. Like, I knew you got the first star here, but sometimes a star popped up when I wasn't expecting during this run. And I thought it was like you get it from another boss, or like I was surprised that like you get two in such close proximity to one another. This is the first segment in the game that's like really like kind of weird in a way, like in like a way that's unique to this game and not like the rest of Mario. I guess it's mostly because of Below. But it's like, you know, it's like Mario, you know, sewers or like underground or whatever, which is like a staple, but it's like, it doesn't really feel like, say you're in like Mario Brothers 1 or whatever. Like that, you see those like mice or rats or whatever they are, like dancing in a circle. It's like, what is that? Yeah, I just skipped over that fight with the Mimic, because I think it took quite a while since I was still pretty under-leveled at this point. The loam is pretty easy, even if you're under-leveled. Takes quite a bit of damage from spells. That's the thing about this game, is that like clearly they were trying to make it so that some enemies were like weaker to spells or like weak to fire or whatever, and like that's totally in the game, but like the game doesn't always give you great feedback on when that kind of thing works well and when it just doesn't. Like, I'm pretty sure Below is weak to magic, more or less, because of how much damage I'm doing here, but like I don't know. And then, you know, it's sort of like the first Pokemon game where, like, okay, so Mario has Jump, and you would think, okay, that does, like, physical damage, right? Whereas Fire Orb does fire damage, but no, I think Jumps are magical, just because they're, like, you know, a skill that you use by pressing the Y button. I hate to go on about this, but, like, this is another one of those moments where it's like, okay, so Below was sitting on that switch, which kept the water back. Is that just, like, what he does all day? Like, does he just never move? When I'm doing, like, a 100% playthrough or whatever, I'll go through this whole section, like, several times to get all the frog coins and flowers and whatnot that are in the caves, but honestly, this section is, like, not that fun, so I just try to avoid the caves and whatever if I'm doing a quick run like this. And when I say 100%, like, you know, I've actually never gotten every item in this game. I think I've gotten everything except for the Super Jump items. Like I think it's called the Attack Scarf and the Super Suit. I think I did get the Attack Scarf, which is 30 consecutive Super Jumps, one time. And to be honest, I don't even remember if I got it legitimately or if I like did some like save stating just to see what the item is like. But something about this game is that even in Japanese, where they can fit more meaning into a small text box, the item descriptions are not great in this game. As far as, I mean, they're flavorful, but they don't exactly tell you what the items do. And again, like the feedback you get in battle doesn't really key you in on it either. So there were all these items, like the Quartz Charm, for example, that I thought did nothing. So I just never used them. I was like, oh wow, I beat the super boss, and I just got this crappy item. So here's Tadpole Pond, and like, these things here are tadpoles. And when I was little, because, you know, I only played this when I was like 6 or 7 or whatever. I did not. I mean, I knew what a tadpole was, but I didn't know what one looked like. So, this whole section where Mallow finds out that he's not a tadpole, I was like, okay, like, you could have just told me he was a tadpole, and I would have known the difference, like, and for all I know, these, like, things in the water are just some other weird fish. I mean, I think, I'm not really paying attention to the specific text in the boxes here, nor am I remembering the dialogue in English correctly, but I mean, I think they say that they're tadpoles at some point, so, like, I think I did know that, but it just, I don't know, it didn't really strike me the way that it was supposed to when I first played this game. And that was, like, the only thing that really kind of confused me or went over my head in this, strangely enough. To be honest, when I try to picture, like, a real-life tadpole in my mind's eye, right now, I can't really do it, because that's not really something that you see all that often. There is a frog right outside my front door, which is, like, completely flattened, not because, like, I killed it or anything. It just got squished somehow, and it's been there for a real long time, and that kind of sucks. It is flattened in, like, a really picturesque way, though, so, like, the morbid side of me wants to, like, pick it up and, like, preserve it in some sort of, like, little book, like people do with insects, or whatever, but I'm not going to do that. Frogfucius just has, like, this live-in lockatoo that serves to, like, make him look like some sort of, like, supernatural hovering being or whatever. That's pretty funny. The way the lyrics, I guess you would call them for lack of a better term, appear on that little, like, wall scroll or whatever is, like, way more poetic, I guess you could say, in Japanese. It's sort of like that part in Final Fantasy VII where you find hints in the Shinra Mansion. Basically, on the wall scroll there, it says, like, Sora Mire, like, Sora meaning sky, and Mire meaning, like looking. And, in English, it just says, so, la, mi, re, or whatever. And, this game actually has a lot of stuff like that is either lost in translation. I mean, that's, like, saying that is kind of dumb these days, because, like, we all know that. We've all seen, like, a video about that, or, like, read, like, Legends of Localization or whatever, so I don't need to go on about that, but the Legends of Localization, I think it is, who did the whole series on Malice Psychopath quotes for this, does a great job detailing how in Japanese they're pop culture references, but in English they're just kind of like wacky nonsense. And that's not to say that the localization of this game is bad. It's actually one of the better that I've played, honestly, but I mean, like, 99% of games, like, if you can play it in the original language, you should, and this is one of those games. But, like, you aren't getting a bad game if you play it in English. These Magic Koopas are, like, one of the only enemies that, like, they appear in the game like this, but you never fight them. I mean, you do, sort of, when you fight the boss, like, near the end of the game. but you don't fight them as like just a regular enemy. I mean, you barely fight the terrapins. That's just in the beginning, and then they have like different versions later. But and the Goombas, obviously you fight everywhere, but you just never fight the Magic Koopas, and that always kind of bothered me. I always thought these little miniatures of all the Mario characters were cool, even though like they're kind of just like shrunken down versions of like their regular in-game models. So I'm sure it like wasn't all that much work for them. But if they had sold these as action figures, I definitely would have had those. When I was a kid, I didn't really understand why this took so long, and now I realize like he's getting used to the wooden doll's body, so that's why he like runs into the stairs and whatever. I don't know why he does like part of his victory pose there. That's a little weird, but the forest maze is like important to me personally, like my history with this game, because I first discovered this game when I was in like a child psychologist's office when I was like 6 or 7 or something, and they had like a Super Nintendo there that the kids could play, like presumably, so like it was like actually in her office or whatever, so presumably if a kid was just like inconsolable, they could play that and then like talk while they play or something. And so like I booted up this game while I was there, and the psychologist was telling me like, oh yeah, like all the kids have been stuck in the forest maze for a while, like specifically on the actual maze part of it. And I was just like, wow, this game is cool. And so then I had my parents like actually go out and buy me this game, and then I just blazed through the entire game. By the time like I went back to that office, I was like an expert at it, and I showed her how to get past it, so hopefully that was helpful for the other kids that went there. And those were the only 2 times I ever went to that place, because like I didn't really have anything wrong with me at that time. It was just that I was having trouble with the schools in the places that we had moved to from the place where I spent the first 6-7 years of my life. And like in one school that we tried, like it was like a sort of religious school. I don't know, it like wasn't where we had to like do mandatory prayer or whatever. It was just kind of one of those laid back ones or whatever. And for some reason I just cried like the entire day when I was there. And it wasn't like anybody was being nasty to me or anything. It was just like something about that school just was like upsetting. I don't really know why. So they sent me to that child psychologist, and I don't even remember if I talked to that lady about anything important at all. But like after I just played a bunch of video games there, we were just basically like, okay, I guess I don't need this. I guess I just need to go to a school that I like. And that never really ended up happening either, but whatever. That's probably a story for another time. I just remember that one of the other 3 people, or the other 2 people that had played this game that I knew in real life, one of them, like me, had spent like entire playthroughs doing the HP level up. I forgot to mention that earlier when I was talking about the level up bonuses. And like if you do that for literally every level, pretty much everybody gets to 255, or like sometimes like Mallow will only get to 254 for whatever reason. So I think there was some like inherent variance, like even if you do the exact same thing. But like, back when you were a kid, like at least for me and like some other people I knew, like having a huge HP total in JRPGs especially was like, it just like felt good, especially if you could get over like 1,000. Obviously, you can't do that in this game, but you know, you would try to just get as high as you could, because like everything is a counting stat, but I don't know, like the attack and defense stats and whatever just don't really do it, because you're not constantly looking at them. You can see them in the status screen or whatever in most games, but like you're always looking at your HP number, so having that up high feels good. But as an adult, I've realized that, like, you know, sometimes having a higher defense stat is better. Sometimes in some games, and sometimes you just don't need it at all. Coming up here is another part of the game that just kind of doesn't really make sense. Like, so Mario and Mallow are like standing, I don't know, like 50, 100 feet away, watching Gino just take these dudes on one-on-one. Or not one-on-one, like 1-on-5 here. And presumably there's like all these other arrows just hanging out, like waiting to mess him up. And all of a sudden Mario is back here, and then they gotta like do like 100-yard dash to get back to where Boyer and Gino are. So yeah, I don't get this part especially. It's pretty comical though, especially when, you know, Mallow eats crap here and then, you know, Mario just keeps on going. This part is pretty funny where like Boyer just like keeps firing arrows like pretty much aimlessly and like laughing, and Gino's just standing there like getting more and more angry. I think this was the most entertaining fight of the run, because I was like just powerful enough to beat him. And this is a good opportunity to talk about that in the Japanese game. Like obviously if you've never looked at a Super Famicom controller, the buttons are colorful, and the Super Nintendo controller is just like these like shades of like blue, purple, whatever. And I always thought they should have kept those colors. And like now when they have like these faux retro controllers, like this kind of crappy one I have, it has the Super Famicom colors. And that's reflected in the game, but in the English game, and presumably like wherever else they had that kind of controller, like it's, you know, the buttons, they change the colors correspondingly. And same with like the menu, like when it's somebody's turn and they can choose between the 4 options. I'm pretty sure at this point I still hadn't like bought any more pick-me-ups, just because I was like kind of trying to like do an amateur speed run at this point, sort of. Not really, because I was still stopping for like hidden chests and whatnot. Although I missed almost all of them in the forest maze, and one of them would have been really helpful in a fight coming up later, maybe in like an hour or so. I don't know. I think that was the moment there where I was like constantly looking in my items and realizing how woeful my whole inventory was, like contemplating whether or not I want to use this Caracola, which I think was a good decision in the end. But like, it's just sort of like when you keep opening the fridge expecting there to be something in there. If that wasn't before, that's like, you know, especially delicious. I think here's where I resign myself to the fact that, like, Mallow should probably just heal up Gino, and then, like, I hope that I can just finish this off with Gino, which luckily I do. In a way, Gino is sort of like, I don't want to say the main character, but he's like the central character of the game. And I realize that now, like, watching all this exposition about, like, you know, the Star Road and the stars and like Gino's place in it, and You know, I mean, he's like, aside from Mallow, he's like the only main character here who's like, you know, totally contained within this game. You know, like whatever is going on now with the property, where it's like, I don't know if Square owns it or like Nintendo owns it or whatever, or if like each of them owns different parts of it or something. I always thought it was funny that you can see that one arrow just like chittering in the corner there. Also, I forgot to mention that after the Boyer fight, I went up and stopped recording, and I like got a drink and stuff. And I also checked that thing about the jumps gaining in power, like the more you use the jump thing. And as far as I can tell, I was correct. Not every resource lists this. It's mostly something that gets discussed in like message boards and stuff, but I'm pretty sure that it is true. Honestly, this is one of the weirder interludes in the game. Like, just you happen upon these like moles and whatever is going on here, and like you go into the mines and you fight Punchinello, who apparently is like not affiliated with the Smithy Gang. I don't really know how you're supposed to know this, aside from, I guess he doesn't say like, you know, all hail Smithy or something of that nature when you fight him, but I never really picked up on that. At this point, I still wasn't like super powerful, even compared to like where I was at the end of the forest maze or whatever, but like Gino is pretty powerful at like his base level. And then there's this whole part, which has nothing to do with anything either. It's just like an excuse for Krocko and his like little gang here, which never makes another appearance. Just like, you know, steals all your money. Which, I should mention, like, money in this game is not a big deal. Like, it's honestly a bigger hassle, like, trying to figure out, like, so you come upon a treasure chest that has coins in it, and, like, then you realize, oh, wait, I already have 999 coins. So, you, like, try to strategically, you know, decide, like, hey, I'll come back for this when I need money, but you never need money in this game. I've always kind of wondered if this segment has, like, other, like, fun stuff you can uncover, like, if you chase Krocko for long enough, for example. Like, I always end up catching him, like, on the third screen, like you saw here, but it just feels like the kind of like, part of the game where something like that, you could do something differently and like get a different scene or something. I also wonder kind of what happens if you just keep going in the dungeon, if you say like, screw it, I don't need my money back. Like, does Krocko just keep running around in there forever? I mean, probably not, because he has to show up later and everything, but in the booster segment, there's a lot of stuff like that, where it's like there's just minor variations, like if you leave the room or something. And there's this part where like you can't run directly up to Punchinello, you gotta go from behind. And this one was pretty tough at a lower level. There's a part where you can power level if you use the invincibility star, which I don't do yet. I do it later, although I didn't include it in the video. And when I was younger, I would always use this spot at least like 2 or 3 times just to gain some levels. But I also, in this game, used to just like fight every enemy on the map whenever I would go through anywhere, which, you know, takes quite a bit of time, but it makes the game pretty easy overall. So like when I would use that invincibility star trick, where you like save the game and then you intentionally die, say on this boss for example, and then you go back to your save spot and you can use the invincibility star again, but like you get to keep your experience points when you die, so you can just keep doing that. But I still had like fantasies of doing like a low level run at this point, so I didn't bother here. Also, Mallow's HP rain doesn't cure status like Peach's heals do, so like if you didn't bring like Able Juice or whatever, you just kind of have to wait for it to wear off. But the nice thing about this game is like anybody who dies in a battle still gets experience. It's like the game is really forgiving in all those respects. At some point during this, like, I start getting, like, you know how when you use Geno Beam, like, if you do the Y button press correctly, it does more damage or whatever. And, like, if you do it correctly, he hops before he shoots. And I know that at some point during this run, I got him to hop. And when I used that skill as a kid, I never got him to do that. I just kind of assumed that I was doing it correctly, but there wasn't like an indicator. But it's not that complicated, so I don't really know what I was doing wrong. Yeah, so here's like, I don't know. I don't want to say this is the worst part of the game, but like riding in this minecart just kind of sucks. It's like, I know exactly what you're supposed to do here. Like, you know, you just go on these straightaways, you can hold the directional pad to turn or whatever. Or like, you know, not turn, but guide yourself to the path that you want. And I know that on these tight corners you have to brake, and then you could boost, but if you boost, even the wide corners become like death traps or whatever, like you go off the track. But like you can't see very far up the track, so by the time you know, like, oh, this is a place where I should have boosted, it's too late. And it's not fun enough where I want to like memorize all of this. And even having played the game a million times, like even when I was playing this game religiously, like I just never got a feel for it, and the controls just don't feel good. So I don't know, like this part's okay here where you're going on like this just horizontal like side-scroller path. Like if it was all like this, I'd be kind of like, oh, okay, maybe I'd like to play this every now and then. Especially if there was like some kind of reward, which to my knowledge there's not, although there might be something I'm forgetting here. It's like, something I always end up doing is like, when I'm supposed to brake, I jump, or vice versa. And no amount of practice is going to make me feel good with that control scheme. I always thought it was weird here how, like, Might is... I mean, he's inside Dinah's, like, apron or whatever it is that she's wearing. Not like a kangaroo's pouch. And I don't know, I don't think I ever really thought that it was like a pouch per se. Like, I'm like 99% sure moles don't have that capability, like they're marsupials or something, but and then to like cap off this whole weird section here is just like this part where it ties you into like the upcoming booster segment. So there's these like weirdos just like hounding you for this beetle. Booster Pass has like all these just like weird things that you can do like this. It's like that giant flower just sitting there, which that's like the only one in the game, more or less, I think. Booster's Tower is one of the better segments in the game. It's just really funny. Not in like a laugh out loud funny way, but just like weird funny. I don't know if this is the first game where Bowser speaks, but like his whole speech patterns are like, his whole phraseology just doesn't involve a lot of kanji. It's just like these, you know, big, blocky, like regular kana characters. And like in Mario Odyssey, for example, like that's how he talks also, from what I remember from playing that game with Japanese text. So I don't know if this game was the one that like set that whole trend. Like these portraits here, these are one of those things that is just like funny about Booster's Tower. Like, I don't want to say it doesn't make sense, because it's like, you know, you've seen something like this where all of somebody's like ancestors have portraits on the wall or whatever. So it's not like a new thing, but it's just like, it's weird that it's here. Like everything about Booster's Tower is just weird like this. Like he has these freaking train tracks just like set up everywhere. I thought there was something in that corner there, but I guess not, or I just missed it. But there's one like here, I think, and I think in another one later on, but I don't know. I think there's a hidden chest here that I missed. I was glad to get this one on the first try. It kind of sucks if you gotta backtrack for that. I mean, you gotta backtrack anyway, but like, if you get the hammer, it makes it not sting as much. But like, you can get through most of Booster's Tower without fighting if you want. It's not that hard. There's not too many points where like an enemy pops out and surprises you. You can kind of just like those sniffets there. They're just kind of docile. Or like these ones just move in a straight line or whatever. But like sometimes if you're like, you know, asleep at the wheel, you can run into these bombs or whatever, like I did here. Come to think of it, I think even when I was a kid and I would fight like everything, I don't know that I fought every one of these bombs. But with Bowser, once you get him, like if you're really low level, Bowser is actually really powerful compared to your other guys, and I'm going to demonstrate that with the boss fight coming up. This was always a personal favorite scene. Something that I figured out here that is like really, really minor, but like I just never discovered it, is that, so like as you'll see coming up, I just run out the door once boosters start throwing bombs, and beforehand I would always run behind the portrait, which, you know, gives you a funny scene, but this is also funny. I didn't realize that you could do that. Something I toyed with the idea of doing here was fighting Booster for the video, and then just like reloading and getting the amulet instead. But Booster is actually pretty tough, and I didn't know if my party was strong enough for that, so I used to be like, oh, why does he have like a bird cage up here? But, you know, now I realize that it's for beetles. You can even see the beetle there. So I really thought that I was going to have to reset this battle and go back and like buy pick-me-ups or something. But as it turns out, Bowser can more or less solo this, as you're going to see. I was really sloppy with like the timed defenses here. Honestly, I don't even really know why I brought Mallow. I mean, I brought him because he's the only healer up to this point, and I like just kind of blew past all the item shops, so I didn't really buy any of that. I think I have like a couple mushrooms that I just found, But, Knife Guy is like the only one of these two that can really affect Bowser. And I think I have like the wake up pin on Bowser or something, which was lucky. So yeah, here's where Mario goes down, and I'm just like really hurting here, and I'm like getting ready to hit the reset button. But you know, then I realized that none of these attacks were really damaging Bowser all that much. I don't think I even have the amulet equipped on Bowser, which would have reduced the damage from these spells even more. Maybe I did, and I just cut it out. The physical attack is doing nothing, and like the meteor shower, whatever it's called in English, is doing nothing. That sleep attack doesn't even attempt to do damage. In fact, whenever I actually die in this and have to start a boss battle over, aside from an upcoming battle, it's mostly because of sleep. Like, some bosses just have, like, sleep all attacks. And it's kind of nasty if you're under-leveled and don't have protection on, like, Peach. This was one of my best ever runs on Booster Hill, I think. And in the beginning, I didn't even consider it to be that good. Like, I kind of miss out on a lot of early opportunities, but in the later stages, I really make up for it. See, this minigame I actually think is kind of fun, as opposed to the minecart one, which you can repeat in its entirety, and like it's exactly the same as the first time you do it. But when you repeat this one, like Booster and the Sniffets aren't there, as far as I remember, and like you can't get flowers, which is fine. Like, I don't expect you to be able to just grind up all your FP in like one go by repeating this, but I think it would have been fun if they had included this section with like some sort of substitute for Booster and the Sniffets. Watching this like without having to play it, I realize now that the cloud that goes by every so often, it's like the same cloud as like when Bowser uses like poison gas, I think, and like that other like poison gas enemy that you can fight in like Balome's temple later on, which I think I included in this. Like, I was just like, wow, I haven't fought that enemy in a while, let me do that. It was ultimately kind of underwhelming, but it's just like another one of those like nonsensical, like, why did they put this in here moments in the game. Toads are just so, like, not self-sufficient. Like, apparently Marymore doesn't have any sort of, like, local government that can handle this, or like, you know, infrastructure, like police or whatever, and like even the Mushroom Kingdom like doesn't have any sort of police force or military force. And I get that they're like clearly pacifists or whatever, but like it's just kind of troubling that these Sniffets can just run wild on this chapel. If you leave the room when Bowser starts trying to break down the door here, and then you come back in, he's just like still doing it already. Like, he doesn't have to, like, you know, exit Mario's body or whatever. But that I only discovered on my retries. Like this boss battle coming up, I had to redo a few times. And you're just going to see the one where I succeeded after I went and bought some pick-me-ups. I guess this is a good time to talk about my third and most notable friend who I know who played Super Mario RPG a lot, or at all. And I was talking with him, like, while I was in the process of recording this, actually, about how the cake boss coming up here is, like, kind of a... I don't think you can get soft-locked here, because then I went and looked at some speedruns, like he was telling me about, and what they do here is they need that red essence that I intimated about like from the forest maze, which I didn't get here because I'd forgotten about it. And that makes Mario or whomever invincible for long enough where you can kind of eke out a win here. And my friend was telling me about that, like that this is one of the first significant challenges in a Mario RPG speedrun. And I haven't really looked beyond that, so that's like my only Mario RPG speedrunning tidbit here. The total time that I accumulated on this was like around 10 hours. And that was with doing a little bit of side questing later, and I also cut out the sewers that lead to the Yoaster Isle because it's just kind of boring, and I didn't bother doing anything on the Yoaster Isle anyway. I mean, this part is easy. Like, even if you're under-leveled, these guys do, like, no damage to you. But the timing can kind of suck when you get the chefs to run away. Because sometimes it's like the beginning of your turn, more or less. I say that, like, I mean, the characters all have their own individual turns, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, the beginning of, like, all three of your characters getting a turn versus, like, maybe one of them getting a turn and then, like, the cake moves, for example. So that's, like, a bit of just, like, kind of random chance. Like, if you just happen to, like, attack last with Bowser or whatever before the cake starts moving again after this time. So, like, the whole thing is you have to hit it 5 times or whatever. Although, I'm pretty sure in some of my over-leveled runs, like, if you hit him hard enough, he'll actually extinguish 2 candles, I'm pretty sure. So, like, you know, even his physical attacks, which are, like, the worst of his attacks, can hit pretty hard, especially if you, like, mess up the defense like I did. But luckily for this time, I actually bought some pick-me-ups. But the spells, or some of them, I guess, can be particularly devastating. Although I think at this point I had the amulet on Bowser finally, so he doesn't really take that much damage from some of the attacks. I think it's only elemental attacks, and to be honest, I wouldn't really bet money on like what attacks are elemental and what aren't. Some of them are kind of ambiguous. But the cake doesn't attack often enough where, like, you can't afford to use a pick-me-up. And luckily, like, if you get struck with fear here, it doesn't really matter. I think if you're, like, way too weak with one of your attacks, it might not blow out a candle. But that usually doesn't happen. Looks like I had another fridge moment with the items there. Like, I don't really know what I was doing. Honestly, after a while, I just get sick of being in the Mushroom Kingdom. This is really, like, the last time you have to come here unless you want to come back and, like, buy the kids' game or whatever. The kid who's playing, like, the Beetle game on the Game Boy, it's at the inn. This is another really not that fun segment in the game. A lot of the time I can get through this without even a single encounter. And it's like, I mean, it's kind of neat for, like, lore reasons. Like, if you want to, like, sit back and like, read all the wishes. But otherwise, if you're kind of doing, like, faster playthrough, like I was here, it's just not really that enticing of a place. There's some, like, sort of unique enemies here, though, like those moles, which, or maybe they're, like, gophers. This part's kind of funny, where Mallow yells at you for reading his wish. There aren't even any items here, to my knowledge. I guess if you think about it, this star is sort of just like the culmination of the whole like Booster Barrymore saga. So it's a way for them to give you a star for Booster without implicating Booster as part of the Smithy gang, I guess. I don't know. These guys are funny. They have such odd speech patterns, and some of the shops like sell you weird stuff that you can't get anywhere else. Like rotten mushrooms and stuff. Although I think you can get those from Great Guys like Look the Other Way game or whatever. So maybe they're not completely unique, but oh yeah, there's poison mushroom here. I don't know if you can get that from the game. It's like none of these guys know where the proper place for a human being to stand is, or like not a human being, I guess, but you know, toads or whatever. And then there's this frog who is like normal, but for some reason he doesn't seem to be perturbed by the presence of these guys, and they don't mess with him either. And this is the only spot in the game where frog coins are useful. I wouldn't say any of those items are super essential. I mean, cutting FP in half is cool. Increased experience is good, I guess. I guess honestly for a faster playthrough, the one that makes it so you can run away from any battle is nice. I'm going to skip over a lot of this segment here, but this is the first part where I went ahead and actually did that whole invincibility star trick a few times. A lot of times when I play this, I just, like, you'll see me unequipping what are in English the work pants, and a lot of times I just leave those on for the whole game because they're some of the only armor that actually increases your attack power, which I always found kind of weird. So if you're already like kind of over leveled, then having those equipped is kind of just like icing on the cake, I think. But I don't think I ever re-equipped them this entire run. The sunken ship, on the other hand, I didn't cut very much out of this because this is one of my favorite parts of the game. I think the little mini games are incorporated pretty well, even though it's just a series of rooms. As opposed to Bowser's Keep, where everything is kind of abstract. This has a lot of stuff that like fits with the sunken ship. None of these mini games actually like screw you over permanently if you mess it up. You can just exit the room and re-enter. This one can be kind of tricky if your perspective is kind of off, or like you just can't really parse with your eyes what's going on, which happens to me even now sometimes. This one is probably the least fun out of all of them. It's just like you're just jumping around in the dark, and it's not like if you go around like into random corners you like find cool items or something. It's just nonsense. Also, the sound clips really weird here, and I don't think it's like an emulator issue. I remember this happening even in the real game. This one is sort of the most difficult of the minigames. It's not difficult, but like, I don't know, sometimes I can just mess it up if I'm asleep at the wheel, sort of. Also, it doesn't give you a reward. That's why I like backtracked a little there. Just double checking. The password in the Japanese version is Suizokukan, which means aquarium. I guess it's like a bit harder in Japanese. I don't know. This is a really easy fight all in all. These things don't do much damage, and occasionally they just take away one of your party members and give them the fear status, which isn't a big deal, especially now that you have Peach, because the group hug skill just restores everybody's status and all. So now this is why I just don't bother giving Peach magic attack, because like she doesn't really have many offensive magic attacks, and after you get the frying pan for her, she can actually do pretty much the most damage out of any character with their physical attack, believe it or not. So I kind of like doing that, just get up like in the 500 range. So a couple things here. One of those people that I mentioned before that I knew in real life who had played this game, he told me that if you have Mario dead and then you kill all of these like little pirate cohorts, which triggers the duel between him and Mario, like that he'll duel Bowser instead. And I was like, wow, cool. And I didn't ever try this out for like a really, really long time until like a few years ago. And it's not true. Mario will just get back up and fight him. So that sucks. But another thing that I remembered that I don't think I mentioned in the past couple hours of doing this is that when I was over at that kid's house one time, I was playing his save file, and like Mallow was using the hammer, which isn't possible, but like I remember it really clearly. And now I think it was probably just like he was using the froggy stick, and on like a really crappy CRT, it just looked like a hammer. And so I just assumed. But I remember having a conversation with him about it, and he was like, yeah, dude, Mallow can use the hammer too. So that's just a weird instance of like your memory playing tricks on you. This is where the mechanics of Super Mario RPG kind of shoot itself in the foot, because I think most people who have played this at least like more than once have figured out that the cursor when you go to attack always goes to the last monster you attacked. So when he splits into his normal and his Mirage form here, if you just don't move the cursor, you'll always pick the right, get rid of it. I think one time I actually tried to leave Seaside Town without letting these guys out, and I'm pretty sure one of your party members, like Mallow, stops you. But it would be funny if you just could bypass that. That's another thing that I would know for sure if I'd actually like watched a full-length speedrun of this game, but this is the last truly like sort of like outdoor segment with a bunch of like strange platform tricks and like cannons like you see here, like in the same vein of Bandit's Way and the one where you like go across those floating platforms over the water and you can jump and get the coins, and at the end you see Bowser and his troops. I don't remember the name off the top of my head. I mean, there's a couple more like outdoor traversal segments, but none of them that use this sort of tile set, I guess. If you're really, really observant, you might have noticed that the invincibility star was wearing off right as I entered Balome's temple, which is because this is the second and last part where I used that invincibility star trick, and that pretty much got me up to a level where I was competitive for the rest of the game. And here's where I'm fighting that poison gas monster that I talked about back at Booster Hill. Didn't really have to think about that because I just finished editing that part, so... It's one of those RPG monsters where you gotta hit it with a magic attack before it'll appear. And I remembered it having way more HP, but this battle does not last very long at all. To this day, I have no idea what this thing is supposed to be, why it's in there. It's just like another instance of Balloon weirdness, sorta. That attack that it does there is one of the rarer spells that an enemy can have, and apparently it's pretty powerful, because it knocked Peach out in pretty much one hit. Something I also wanted to comment on is, I don't even remember if Bowser's Hurley Gloves are like just the best weapon for him for a really long time, or if I just missed an item for him somewhere in this, because I don't remember exactly where every weapon was, and I know for a fact that I was using some suboptimal weapons at certain points. There's a lot of hidden chests and just general weirdness in here concerning items. It's one of those chests where you gotta like jump on a different chest. And this whole thing is like you get a fortune, which is just like Balloon saying that he's hungry or something, and there's only two options. You can either go into this like little cove with a bunch of items that you don't have the key for yet, or you can go further into the dungeon and complete it. I think you have to exit the room in order to refresh the whatever type of room it is, but I always just like hit the tongue when I come back up anyway. This fight just isn't that hard, even if you don't grind yourself up. Like, Balloon still doesn't hit very hard, and these clones that he's about to make just kind of suck too. I guess this whole part with the switch is supposed to be like a callback to the first Balloon fight, and you're supposed to think, oh, is it going to happen again? And I never really picked up on that, if that was intentional. So, if that's what they were trying to do, then bravo, and it was just lost on me. But Monstro Town is pretty cool. It's got a lot of weird, like, I don't know if I would call a fan a monster, but it's got all these like fun little encounters, and some of them are actually pretty useful. Like if you talk to this treasure chest, it tells you how many hidden treasure chests are left, which actually I guess is not really that useful. Maybe a hint about where to go for one would have been more useful. The star gives you the second melody for Todovsky's whole thing back at Tadpole Pond. And I didn't bother going back for that in this run, because I found that I had actually gotten kind of bad at making the melodies, and the reward isn't like super amazing. I cut out some of the footage, but I had actually, back at Land's End, fumbled around for a bit because I forgot that you have to talk to this lady in order to get the paratroopers to come help you. I forgot that that was kind of the whole point of Monstro Town. This Womp that you can talk to in here, if you talk to it like 10 times, it knocks that key off of the roof outside. And I did do that here, and go back and get the treasures, which are pretty sizable, actually. This part here in the shop is just another one of those useless interludes that's like, I mean, it's interesting and funny, like watching this guy and all of his little Goomba children who have now opened a shop here. but you don't actually get anything out of it. You can just shop here, and I think the little Goombas sell you something different than the dad Goomba, but I don't think that I checked that here. And then I did go ahead and do this whole like 3 Musty Fears segment. I didn't end up actually going and getting all of the flags. One of them is between the O and the A of Yoster Isle. One of them is behind the sign in Rosetown, which, if you look closely, when I first got to Rosetown in this segment, in this run, I actually like instinctively checked behind that sign when I first got there, which was pretty funny. And then the last one is like near like a green bed, and I know that I know where that is, but I just didn't bother like going to all the different towns and trying all the different beds. It might even be the one in Mario's pad, but I forget. The item you get is pretty good. It's another one of those items where it doesn't really tell you what it does entirely, but it's one of the best ones. Here I went ahead and fought Jagger and Jinx. I only did the first Jinx fight. They're, in Japanese, they're Nokoyan and Jackie. So, like, he's like Turtle, and then like Yan, like, you know, sort of like a generic monk's name. And then Jackie, like Jackie Chan. And I feel kind of like they could have just like kept those in the localization, and people would have appreciated that. I think people like Jackie Chan here. Jinx isn't really like he's like sort of a supposed to be not a super boss, but like a more powerful boss, and he's just not that impossible to beat. Like, his attacks can be defended pretty easily. In the later stages, like the second and third fight, more of them cause instant death, but I don't know, he attacks more than once per turn, I think, here, but like, it's just not that big of a deal. You can revive your guys and like still have time to attack, and his HP isn't like enormous, so you can get a pretty good belt out of defeating him. That was usually one of the 3 items that I would always equip on my main party. It would be the amulet on somebody, the rare scarf, which I actually didn't get in this entire run. I'd forgotten where it was, and the Jinx belt. And there's actually better items like the quartz charm I was talking about earlier, but you know, back then I didn't know that it actually did anything, so, you know. I actually did pretty well on this section, I thought, but I didn't get the Troopa pin. I've gotten it on like every other run, because it's not that hard to get, but I guess I was just like slightly too slow. I skipped over a lot of nonsense in this whole area before getting to the boss. There's that whole part where you can like have this Shy Guy water a bunch of piranha plants, and you go down into the pipes beneath them, and there's like some decent items, and like those roulette boxes and stuff. I just figured I would talk about it here, rather than show that whole painful section, because if you don't do it mindfully, it can take a really long time to get them all out of the way, and then like go down into the pipes. But this boss isn't terribly difficult. It can mushroom your guys, and that kind of sucks. This is one of those bosses, like, with the tentacles in the sunken ship, where it's just like, you're just trying to get them out of the way, just so they don't take up so many turns. Like, you can only watch them throw fireballs at you so many times before you get sick of it. This part here kind of sucks, honestly. Climbing on these vines isn't... most of them aren't that difficult to grab onto, but, like, climbing up and down these, like, isn't a big deal, but you might run into an enemy and that messes up your jump, or, like, sometimes you grab onto it and it just, like, you slide off without even having pressed, like, down or right or left or whatever, so it sucks. This is actually where you can get the rare scarf if you go up like the leftmost side here, which I didn't bother doing because I thought it was just like a dead end or something. In Japanese, Valentina is margarita, which I guess they probably changed it because it's like an alcoholic drink, but that's kind of a stretch. I don't know that. Like, if you're a child and you see, like, the name Margarita, are you going to be like, oh, now I magically know that that's an alcoholic drink? Or what? I don't know. I actually know somebody, or have known somebody in real life, named Margarita, so imagine telling somebody named Margarita that, like, their name's inappropriate. I always kind of wonder what these segments, like, because it was just using the, like, time limit sort of music there, and it's like, you know, when a composer makes songs for a game, do they know that it's going to be used in that sort of context, or did the programmers and, like, the rest of the developers just, like, say, you know, we need one of these songs that fits this scene, kind of, like, where they're just, like, recounting memories, and maybe this one sort of fits. I don't know. I guess I'll just talk about Dodo here. This guy shows up everywhere in this castle, or palace, or whatever you want to call it. You can fight him here if you fail too many times, and you don't get the feather item. And then there's another spot later where he's just walking around in the map, and it's not clear why. And you can fight him again, but you can also kill him with the invincibility star, which is pretty funny. It's like the only time you can kill a boss that way. And that's always one of my favorite moments in this entire thing. And then you fight him again as part of the Margarita fight. So in total, this is like the most prevalent boss in the game, just about, I think. More so than Krako, even. Ultimately, I think this is one of the lamer dungeons in the game. A lot of these halls just kind of look the same. And I always end up just kind of like going back and forth a little bit because I'm not always entirely sure where I'm going. There's a weird hidden treasure chest you can find in here, which I didn't find until like after I had completed this whole recording process, which of course I knew about back in the day, but you have to like go on this little hidden path and hit a treasure chest. And I think there's at least one more of those, and later on I find a different treasure in that sort of way. So I think I left that in here. So I'll explain that when I get to it. I don't really know what the point of this whole thing is here. I guess it's just like, oh hey, we need a boss here, so let's make this like Mario Brothers 2 throwback or something like that. This thing's name is Catherine in the Japanese. I don't even remember if it was called Birdo in the English or something else entirely. And I don't know what Birdo's name is in Japanese, so that's going to be a mystery to me until later, if I remember to look it up. This whole part here is kind of dumb, where Bowser goes to break down this door and Mallow stops him because he's like, oh, but wait, what if my parents really are sick? And it's like, well, first off, you've seen this, like, farce that's going on here, and it's like, oh, but all of a sudden you really believe that maybe your parents are sick, like these charlatans have been saying. And number two, even if they are sick, don't you want to, like, break in there and rescue them, even if you haven't dealt with Valentina yet? It's like, I don't know. I mean, I see why they did it as part of the game. It just doesn't make any sense. This invincibility star isn't super useful, like, if you wanted to grind. It only lasts for, like, a few seconds, but, like I said before, you can kill Dodo with it, so I think it's pretty cool. This was another spot where I had to splice in a different attempt, because this is the second to last time I died in this run. Because I forgot that she actually has a sleep ball attack, which I think I mentioned a while back. This part is easy, provided you don't put like Mallow or like a really underpowered Peach in the center spot of your party, so that Dodo can duel them. But like Bowser or like Geno can just completely destroy him. This part where you're only controlling Mario and your other party member can be kind of dangerous, I guess. Because if like Peach gets killed, for example, you don't have that third character to help bring her back and get everybody else back up to speed. I don't know if once your other party member comes back, if I even ever bothered killing Dodo, or if I just went straight for Margarita. I mean, I just went straight for her this time, because I wasn't sure if it was one of those battles where, like, if you kill the main boss, everybody else goes away, or if you have to kill both of them regardless. This part is funny, because it's like Mario just knew that there was going to be a tearful reunion. Although it doesn't really make any sense because they're up in the clouds, so why would it be raining above the cloud? Although, I think that, like, I don't know anything about the science of it, but I'm sure that it's possible for, like, one cloud to be over another cloud somehow. I don't know. In between audio takes here, I cut out a bunch of backtracking, and I'm not sure if that's where I got the fertilizer from the Shy Guy, which is on another mid-air hidden path in Nimbus Land. And also, I just wanted to mention that toward the beginning of this video, I think I remarked that when the Super Mario RPG logo appears over Exor in that like opening screen in the intro of the game, even in the English version, it does say just Super Mario RPG. There's no Legend of the Seven Stars. So, skipping past the shop and everything here, you get to the I think it's called Tsar Dragon in the English, and it's Kaiser Dragon in Japanese. And my friend was telling me that this is another boss that speedrunners have trouble with, I guess. I think it's probably because of this whole bit with the flames that he does, maybe. So in this part of the battle here, where he becomes a zombie, I actually alluded to this part toward the very beginning, where if you use a pure water on him, which I do a few times here because I just randomly had some sitting around, it actually makes him attack himself, and I didn't know that on any of my previous playthroughs. Although, I'm sure I probably wondered about it at some point, I just didn't have any left in my inventory, because I usually either clear them out or sell them or whatever. And it's not that useful because it doesn't cause him to skip a turn, but that's just another fun thing you can do that's like unique to a specific enemy. Because this is the only boss, I think, that's actually undead. There's a bunch of enemies, like the dry bones in the sunken ship and whatnot, but this is the only boss. You know, this whole part here with the Axum Rangers, I remember now that before I beat this game, I think I had like the official strategy guide, or I don't know, maybe I was looking at an online guide or something, and it didn't have pictures really, whatever I was looking at. And it had the names of all the bosses and everything, and I'm looking at stuff like Axum Rangers, and I knew that Power Rangers was a thing at that time. Like, I was a fan of Power Rangers at that point in my life. And I'm thinking to myself, like, they must just be making stuff up in this guide. Because, like, why would the Power Rangers or, like, some knockoff be in a Mario game? And even once I finally got here, it still didn't really make sense to me. It, like, didn't fit. But, I mean, I understand now that this game is chock full of all these sorts of references to, like, Japanese media and stuff. But, still, it's a pretty crazy game. Crazier than, like, Paper Mario. which mostly just had like native Mario stuff in it for the most part. These guys are pretty fun to fight. The first part of the battle is far more interesting than the second part, because these guys all have their own unique skills and behaviors and everything. So like the Pink Ranger heals. The Black Ranger can do like just 2 attacks, whereas the others can only do 1. For the most part, I think. The Green Ranger casts spells. The Yellow Ranger is like, it causes like at least 1 status effect. It's pretty tanky. And the Red Ranger just like powers up and does normal attacks. And I think actually in English they're called like Axum Green, Axum Black, etc. Not like Black Ranger and Green Ranger. But, you know, I mean, it's supposed to be like Sentai Power Rangers, so whatever. Some of them have pretty pitifully low HP, so you can take them out pretty quickly, but like, it seems like the yellow one actually gets more powerful if you leave them for later on. And I don't think you can even kill the red one until you've killed the rest of them, so yeah. This part of the fight is just mindless, but back when I was a kid, this was actually really challenging for me because this thing does a lot of damage, and I couldn't really put it together in my brain for some reason that you just need to have more hit points, more levels under your belt, and I don't know if I went back and grinded, or if I equipped something different, or what, but you know, now it's kind of, it's really boring. You just get hit with this thing. You can defend if you want, or you can just take it and just heal up and attack with your 2 other characters. But as you can see, I almost got wiped here because I was already a little bit low on HP. But again, it's not even an issue because this thing has to charge, so you have time to recover. Skipping ahead a little bit here, I really like this bus, or whatever it is that you take from Nimbus Land. It's like a giant Lakitu or something, I guess. This is the kind of imaginative character, or whatever you'd call it, design that I really like in Super Mario RPG that I guess we can attribute to Square, or Squaresoft, and not Nintendo so much. Because I haven't really seen this sort of inspired character design since this game, even in like Paper Mario, which was good, don't get me wrong. The first Paper Mario is a really, really nice game, but it's not quite the same as this. I think nobody would argue against that. This part is kind of cool, where it's like this dramatic little send-off. Everybody comes to see you off, sort of. But, I mean, I don't want to knock Nintendo too much, because they made a lot of great games in this vein, even after this. But there was this period of time where Squaresoft was just churning out hit after hit. And even though this game is one of the more mild RPGs they produced, it's still really good. This part here is strange in the beginning of Bowser's Keep, where it's like there's just complete darkness, and you can fight some enemies, which mostly run away if you have Bowser in your party. And here, like midway, or like a third of the way through, you find Croco, and you find him again a little bit later. But you can find some decent stuff in his shop here, but he only has the best stuff in his next shop. And this is the main attraction of Bowser's Keep, are these like 6 paths you can take. And I actually go through 5 of them here, more or less. There's 2 that are like brain teasers, basically, and this is one of them. And then there's 2 that are battles, and I got both of those, and I just cut them out completely because they're kind of monotonous, but you get the best items from those ones. And the other 2 are like platforming, and I got those as well. And those are like medium fun, I think. But I like these ones the best. This one is like, if you know the logic behind it, it's like you basically can't lose. He tells you how many coins you can take in like a single shot, and you can always manipulate it so that he will get screwed. So no big deal here. Also, you cannot control which ones of these you get in any given run of this game. You always get like a random 4, no matter what doors you go behind, but you can go back through and do the others, so you can't miss out on like Bowser's best weapon or Gina's best weapon, for example. This one is one of my favorite sort of puzzles that's in like everything, where you press one of these buttons and all of the surrounding ones also go down, but if they're, you know, already down on any of the sides, they will come back up. So, you know, you gotta figure that out, and I just kind of got through that pretty quickly, even though I wasn't really trying to focus on it too much. But that kind of bites me in the butt here, because this one you can screw up pretty easily if you're not really paying attention. And I did so here, and that's where I got sent back and just forced to do some different ones instead. And you're mostly going to be seeing the platforming ones here, because of what I described earlier. Yeah, here's one of the, I guess you could call it platforming, even though you're really just, like, you can complete that without jumping, I think, if you want. But anyway, these segments aren't really all that fun. They have the most, like, random items in them, so you can, like, stock up on, like royal syrups and stuff, if you want here. But ultimately, the stuff you get here isn't that great, especially compared to the like enemy gauntlet ones. I really wish that I had gotten the other brain teaser path, because that has some of the more interesting puzzles, I think. There's that one where you have to figure out what place all of those monsters placed in like a marathon or like a decathlon or whatever. It has, like, you know, swimming, running, cycling, etc. I can't think of the name. And I haven't done that section in Japanese, so I kind of wanted to do that. And then there's that other one where you count how many barrels are on the screen as fast as you can. And there's like one other puzzle that I can't think of off the top of my head. But, you know, none of these things are puzzles that you haven't done before in some form. But I think it's fun here. And I know that when we were at the sunken ship part, I mentioned that I thought the sunken ship integrated it all better. But, you know, every time I come here into Bowser's Keep and I do these segments that aren't just like, you know, enemy after enemy, I usually have a good time with it. Another thing is that these platforming segments give you like 10 tries, which is way too many, even though some of the platforming is like maybe a little janky. And the brain teaser segments send you back immediately if you lose or like, you know, get something wrong once. Which I guess it's not that big of a deal, because you can just go right back through the door. But, I mean, I feel like the same is probably true of these, so I don't really know what they were thinking exactly. This is also the part of the game, for me at least, where if you have too many items, you end up having to throw away a lot of items. And I wasn't even really trying to hoard items in this. I think at a few points in this run you can see that my inventory was like pretty empty, all things considered. I guess it was mostly because I had like flower tabs and stuff. Even to like the very end of this, I have some of those in my inventory, just about. But the game, especially if you know where all the hidden chests and everything are, you rack up the items pretty quickly. I actually love these Donkey Kong enemies that are in the game. There's some in the forest maze, there's some here, and I think there's some in like one other section that I'm forgetting. But they just look exactly like Donkey Kong, and they don't say Donkey Kong, they say like Chained Kong and stuff like that. But I really dig them. This exercise is kind of bizarre. I don't really know why they thought this would be all that fun. It's like these bombs chase you around, and they can get stuck really easily on these walls, but like, you know, if you touch them, you get sent back, so it's just kind of like, you know, that's bound to happen at least once, and then you just kind of ride past them because you've already got them in chests, so it's like really kind of unfulfilling, honestly. This part is the jankiest, and also probably the slowest part overall, just because the angles are kind of weird sometimes. It doesn't feel good to jump, always. Especially because it always feels like you're going to hit your head on the chests when you're jumping. So it's like, I mean, I don't think it really does happen, but it's just something, a feeling you can't shake, kind of. And then there's all these useless items that just, like, I don't know, you kind of feel like you have to get them. I think a lot of players probably would feel that way. As you can probably imagine by this point, I had completely abandoned the whole amateur speedrun angle. I still don't know why I bothered getting all of these chests, but I think maybe because I did go back and play this save file a little bit after I had completely finished recording, just for fun, in between doing other things, and I thought maybe I would go back and get all of the stuff that I missed and experience the rest of the game in Japanese. So I guess that's that, and I missed that one chest there, so that's kind of aggravating. You can't go back. But, you know, if there's anything we've learned from this whole experience, it's that that item is probably worthless. Unless it was a rock candy. And, yeah, just skip right over that whole section. And just go move right on to the only Magic Koopa enemy in the game, who is very, very weak to my beefed up party. See, I got the Lazy Shell and the Frying Pan, and Bowser has the Drill Claw now, so this guy doesn't stand a chance at all. I didn't lose to him, but I lost to Exor coming up. And so I did have to redo this battle, and I'm not sure if this is the one where I killed him before I even had a chance to see his minions, and yeah, it looks like it is. In the other take, he managed to summon like a dragon or whatever before I managed to kill him. And then, you know, Bowser has another like little reunion scene with him, and he creates this golden treasure box that gives you 1 coin every time you hit it, but, like, you know, it never runs out. So, I mean, as we've established, money is worthless in this game, or not worthless, but, like, you will never be at a loss for money, so. I even checked my inventory there just to see that I did indeed have 999 coins. And the worst part is, after I buy all of the, like, you know, best armors here, like, I went and sold, like, my old stuff, and I basically had, like, 999 coins again. So I didn't even need that chest after this. This fight against Boomer coming up here is also very easy, with the disclaimer that, you know, I am fairly over-leveled and have some decent items and equipment, like the Lazy Shell. But you pretty much just hit him until he dies. You know, just like the Cyber Demon. And he has like 1 insta-kill attack, which is like whatever. Obviously, if you're watching this and you know, like, anything about the intricacies of Mario RPG, you know why Geno is here in my party rather than Bowser. Geno is like a stud for pretty much everybody, it seems, and I do admit that at the end of the day, he probably is a better choice than Bowser, because he's a little bit more versatile. But my classic party has just always been Mario, Peach, and Bowser, so I just rolled with that this time. it's a party that works for me. I've never really had any true problems with it, but you know, like I said, you could, you know, roll a Mallow party, and it doesn't matter. But unlike some other enemies that can, like, you know, alternately Vigor up or Valor up, like Boomer here, when he goes into his blue mode, he just gets hit really, really hard, and you can kill him really quickly. There, he just missed his insta-kill attack. And now you go through this, like, you know, fake suicide thing or whatever. And because it's a children's RPG, the Chandelier Ho, or whatever it's called, you know, makes sure to mention that he's not actually dead, or whatever. That doesn't stop the party from doing this whole, like, dance segment on top of the chandelier, though, So yeah, this was the last time that I died in this run, because, like with Margarita, Exor has a sleep all attack. I couldn't recall exactly which parts you have to disable before he becomes vulnerable to Geno Whirl, so I just kind of took out everything. I think I have done this fight without Geno Whirl before, but it hasn't been very many times, because this isn't really that fun of a fight, honestly. Like, it's hard to tell, like, what part of his body does what, so it's like you can't really go into a real strategy. It's just kind of like you disable as much as you can and then just wail on him. And then you get, like, sucked into the sword itself, which is a little weird. It's like, I don't really know what that's supposed to signify. Like, that there's, like, another dimension on the other side of it, or what. For a final dungeon, this is all pretty mild. There's not many interesting mechanics, like some of the other dungeons, like Bowser's Keep, or the Sunken Ship, or whatever. It's just kind of like, there are these, like, little nuts and bolts you can climb on, and, like, traverse across the whole entire, like, screw part of it, or whatever you would call it, and like, a bunch of morphs start appearing that are, like, you know, former bosses and whatever. So some of these segments where if you fall down, either intentionally or unintentionally, there are, like, treasure chests below, or, like, secret rooms. In fact, it might only be one spot, but I, you know, fell down the vast majority of them just to check. That's pretty much the only interesting thing that really happens here, I would say. Eventually you get to this clock boss, which, in a vacuum, this is actually kind of a cool boss. Every time the clock hands move, it unleashes a different attack, or sometimes it just stays docile. And the bells either attack, or I think only the right one heals, and they can do that too, where they, like, instantly kill somebody. But again, it's not really a big deal, because pick-me-ups are overpowered, and you can just do this with Peach. And obviously the bells are pretty easy to take out, and that makes the fight much more manageable, because the clock only attacks once every time it has a turn. And I guess one day I probably do want to try doing this fight at, like, the level you're supposed to be at when you get here, which I think I've done before, but I just don't remember. And maybe this fight is a little bit more engaging. I think it's still more fun than some of the fights in the game. Like, I don't know, maybe like Jonathan Jones, or like Eurydivic, or something like that, where they just have one thing that they do, and this boss has several interesting things that it does. But I've never really paid attention to the pattern, because it hasn't ever come that close to killing me or anything like that. And then a lot of what it does are just like these useless status effects. Like, you know, if Peach becomes a Scarecrow, it's not a big deal because you can still cast spells when you're a Scarecrow. So, and even the other characters, like, their spells aren't necessarily terrible. Sometimes even when only one of my party members has some sort of issue, like low on HP or has a status effect, I'll just use Group Hug anyway, because the animation is faster than Therapy, and it's only like a couple more FP. And I always have tons and tons of FP without even trying. So, like, I could probably go through this entire game without ever using a syrup, if I wanted to. And this is the part where you start heading into, like, areas where the boss morphs are. Like, you can see the Axum Rangers here. Some of them are like just the red, green, and pink rangers, and then others are just the yellow and black rangers. And they can actually be pretty annoying, because some of them inflict, like, I think the pink ranger inflicts like the mushroom status, and I didn't bother to protect it here. I mean, you can easily trivialize any of this. And then like, in these sections you can fight like Boyer and Eurydivic later on too. And those guys don't take very long at all. Another little wrinkle is that you get shot at with arrows, and so that can cause you to get stuck in a random encounter sometimes. So that's a little obnoxious, I suppose. One of the more superficially interesting bosses here, Cloaker and Domino, I think they are in English. Their whole gimmick is that when you kill one of them, the other one backs up into like the back part of this path that everybody is on and gets on top of a snake. And the snake it's not the same one between the two of them. They each have like their own pet snake, I guess, is the implication. And, you know, Domino, which I think is the one with the shield, is like physically oriented, and Cloaker is magically oriented. I mean, I probably didn't need to say that, like, just by looking at them. I just decided to kill Cloaker so that I had a more physically oriented boss after this part. To be honest though, I don't exactly know how, like, which guy you have remaining affects like what properties the snake has. So maybe it's like counterintuitive where you get a snake that's more powerful magically or something. Like this one here keeps hitting Peach for like almost all of her HP with a poison attack. But luckily, because poison is pathetic, as we went over before, it just doesn't matter. She doesn't get killed off by the extra damage. So there's just like no way that these guys can kill me. After that, you get into like the final few rooms of the game. And it's just, you know, the main part of the factory. And the game kind of makes a big deal about these like guys that are called like director and stuff like that in the English game. It's just like their Japanese names are like factory chief and stuff, so it's the same crap. But you fight these like little, you know, hammers and drill bits or whatever they are, and the point of them, I know, really is so that each of the characters can have their own little moment to shine right before the final battle. Because once you get to Smithy, they only have like a smaller moment, I think. But these battles are like sort of repetitive. They have like, I think this one powers up when you kill his hammer guys, and they might all do that. But after this one, I just said, you know, screw it, and did it like Jonathan Jones style, where I killed the boss first. Eventually you make it into this room where you fight another boss that I'm not going to bother to show here because it's not that interesting. Its main attack is that same final attack that the Axum Rangers use, and that like just doesn't do anything to me at this point, so might as well just skip over here, where this crane takes you into the final room of the game. And there he is. Smithy is just right there. It's just, that's him. Or, Kajio in Japanese, which just means, like, you know, like Smith King. So, same difference, basically. Smithy was a fine localization choice. And, you know, Gino talks some smack to him. And, Mario jumps, showing his resolve. So, you know, it's showing you that this is like the main Super Mario RPG party with the original characters, and then Bowser and Peach come out for their own little say, even though they've all already had their, like, little farewells, sort of, with those director enemies. And I sort of missed it while watching just now, but somebody, I think Gino points out, or Mallow points out, that the final star piece is on Smithy's chest. The music for fighting Smithy is quite good. I mean, all the music in this game is great. Just, you know, continuing Squaresoft tradition, but Smithy's attacks are also really entertaining, like that whole, like, you know, piston that comes down and attacks, and his final form has some really cool attacks too. You can kill this little thing that shoots out the goop that he hammers into, you know, enemy shapes, and I think what I did here was I just used, like, rock candies and stuff to attack both at the same time, because this mechanism here actually is pretty annoying, and these Shy Guys hit a little bit harder than I remember. I don't remember if there are any other enemies that can come out of that thing, but I didn't really want to find out, so I tried to kind of take it out a little bit casually. The nice thing is that, you know, because this is the final battle, I can use these rock candies, but if I want to go back and use them on Culex, who I didn't talk about at all, I can do that. And if you don't know, Culex is the optional boss of this game. It's like a Final Fantasy IV throwback in a way. It's not really, because Culex is not in that game. It's more just like he's in the spirit of Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy in general, and he uses the Final Fantasy IV boss music and everything. And he's pretty tough if you're underleveled, because he has these 5 crystals with him, so it's sort of like fighting a super boss and the Axum Rangers at the same time, in a way. So that's why the rock candies and the star egg, if you have that, are both really useful there. Especially because some of them have, like, really high defense, and those items always do fixed damage, no matter what. The star egg is like it does 100 damage, as opposed to the rock candy's 200, but the star egg is unlimited. You can use it as many times as you want. And the way you get it is really obscure. You need something from Marymore, as I remember, and you need this other item that I think you get in Booster's Tower that you have to use like 30 times while Peach is equipped with like a certain item. I could be remembering this entirely wrong, but it's not something that you can really discover by accident, honestly. But if you know about it, it's really invaluable for fights with like a lot of enemies in them. So yeah, all of Smithy's creations and minions and everything try to cool him off, but he just, you know, flips his lid. And then you get to see his final form. Design-wise, this is one of the better final bosses that I've seen in the game. I don't know that the execution, like mechanically with everything, is like the best that it could have been. At one point during this, I actually had to like kind of clumsily play without looking a little bit, and I was checking on my phone just to make sure that it's the head that you have to attack, not the body, in order to defeat him. I know it's either one or the other, or like you can do either. I couldn't really remember, but like as I was like finishing checking up, I killed him, so it wasn't a big deal, and I still don't really know what the answer was at the time of this recording. But anyway, he has several different heads that he can shape. The tank has like fairly high defense and you know, just shoots these bullets. It's not like a very threatening head. And his body can shoot like those little pellets that aren't threatening either, and it can, you know, he can hammer one of your guys, and that's not a big deal either. I think maybe killing the body just disables those attacks or something. So, you know, I just, like, at this point I'm looking in my inventory and just seeing what I have left, and I'm like, okay, I might as well use this red essence, or whatever. Here I'm breaking my rule of just using group hug, for reasons unknown. So this is the most dangerous of the heads. The magic hits really hard, but the flip side of it is that he takes a ton of damage from your regular attacks. Which is unfortunate because I think Peach can hit him for like, you know, several hundred points of damage with like a single bat of the frying pan. So probably what I should have done here, if I really wanted to like maximize my output for whatever reason, is just have Bowser use Colas, assuming I have some left, and just have Peach attack. And, you know, she dies here, and this is probably the closest I came to losing this. And sometimes he just changes back into the same head, which in this case is fine, because it's kind of like a fool me once sort of situation here. So now I'm ready for the magic head, so this is fine. I think there might be one head that I don't see in this entire fight, but I'm not sure. I guess maybe I came a little closer to dying there, so let's wait and see. Yeah, this is the other head that I got in this battle. Those might be the only heads that he has, but this one has just really high defenses, but it doesn't do much other than that. So if you want kind of like an uneventful, like fairly easy battle, you want to hope for this head for the most part. Smithy is one of like 2 enemies, I think, that can use that Shredder attack in this game, the other being Culex. And it disables like some of the like effects that you can bestow upon your party with items, and also it cuts the effectiveness of some of your equipment, like that quartz charm that I keep bringing up, and some of the other items that give, like, you know, a 50% bonus to damage or defense or something like that. So that's what that thing does. It cuts your bonuses or nullifies them entirely. But the way I was playing this game for so many years, it just doesn't matter. Oh, there's like another head that I forgot about. It's this like stupid, you know, question mark chest, which I think just does like statuses and like some like mid-tier attacks, so this thing isn't a problem either. And here is where I started doubting myself and like attacking the body a couple times. And Peach dies again. And from here you can start seeing that like my actions are getting a little bit slower and like more nonsensical in some ways, because I'm trying to look at my phone to, you know, figure out if I'm doing this right. I missed a timed attack there. I think at this point I was seeing if I had any like able juice lying around or something. Just because Peach was silenced. And it didn't matter, because that was it. And all the usual stuff happens. He calls you an idiot, and then he explodes. And then this happens, and I'll just let it roll. Super Mario RPG changed the course of my life. Um, it helped me through a really difficult transitional phase of my life. And I didn't really know it at the time. It was like I hadn't played that many games, period, or that many JRPGs before I played this. And it made me forget about a lot of the stress of moving and trying to start over basically in like another part of the country. And I would play this game like at least once every year for such a long time, and I don't really know why I stopped. There's some other games that I played habitually, and I also stopped after a while, but none were bigger than this for me. And it's not like I had any like significant emotional response to it every time I played it, but it was just clearly it had that kind of it was that kind of deal for me. And I don't know necessarily if that was a good thing. because maybe it was like kind of a crutch. Uh, I've been chasing that JRPG dragon ever since, and I don't know how many hours I've put into those, or just games in general. And I don't know what kind of person I would have been if I hadn't gone to that psychologist and played this game. Uh, Chances are it would have been like a similar trajectory, or I would have hooked on to something else, maybe something worse, or maybe I wouldn't be here at all. But, when the game looks you in the face and tells you thank you, you know, it's hard not to think about the intentions of, games developers, and how, at least at this point in time, you could be sure that, they were putting like real joy into these things. I mean, you look at this credits sequence, and you can't possibly think to yourself that, some cynical, money grubbing individual made this. I mean, certainly it was their job, but I don't know. It's just, you know, you don't do something like this unless you like making people happy on some level. Uh, the vast majority of people, I would say that's true. I'm sure there are exceptions, but there's exceptions to everything. So, and this isn't an obscure game. Like, although I've only met a few people that I've really talked to at length that have played this game at length, I know that people have played this. I know that this game was successful, but it's not really talked about much anymore. And so, in my mind, that makes it kind of like this, especially in terms of Squaresoft. It's like it's really just kind of like a footnote in their history. I mean, there's so many Final Fantasies that each individually eclipses it, and then there's other like monster games. Because even if you're taking your time on like a first run of this game, doing like the main objective, just like getting to the end of it, doesn't take you more than 20 hours, if that. So it's a really breezy game. You might even dare to say that it's a child's game. There's not any like real gross in jokes that I can think of. I mean, there's that part where you can find Toadstool's question mark item, but even that, it's like even in the Japanese, it's just X's. So you don't know what that is. You can only really speculate. It could be a pair of socks for all you know. So this is just like a really light-hearted, innocent, genuine game. And I can't believe that it's like such a large part of who I am. On a more trivial note, not every time that I played this game did I actually get to the credits. A lot of times I just got all the way through. I got like all or most of the side stuff, and then I just like kind of got to the end of the factory and just like called it quits and made a new save file the next time I played. And even when I would get to the credits, I didn't really like credit sequences that much, even if they were good like this one, because it's just sitting still and watching something like this is like kind of difficult for me at times. I appreciate them now, especially with the time to reflect. Um, but that's actually kind of been a theme for me for a lot of role-playing games, Japanese role-playing games, and a lot of other types of games too, where I get really, really far into it and then maybe don't even finish it. And there are a lot of games that I really love and really enjoy that I've actually never like beaten the final boss, or I've never done like a full run of a game. Like I've done like a segmented sort of run where like I think there's at least one game I can't think of at the time at the moment, but I like copied somebody else's save from a memory card that was at the end. I played it through to the end from there, and I played in my own file for the rest of the game. I don't really know why I did that. It's just kind of bizarre to think of. Uh, Sometimes I just don't place much importance on finishing games, but I did finish this one on my first run through it. Uh, and I did want to see this one through to the end because it just blew my mind so much at the time. It felt like so much of a, it felt like a much bigger game. And maybe if I had done the side content this time, I would have felt the same way. Maybe if I had taken my time and read more of the NPC dialogues and like done the little beetle mini game in the Mushroom Kingdom's Inn, maybe I would have still felt that way. So maybe that was the wrong approach, but you know, that also would have been like 20, 25 hours of stuff to edit, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for that yet. So I will just watch these fireworks and be happy that I'm over with it. But you know, and I know, that this isn't the last time I'm going to be playing this game.